When Mrs. Margaret Whitmore settled onto her usual park bench, she expected just another quiet afternoon feeding the birds. But then she noticed a young girl, Emily, nervously walking toward her, glancing over her shoulder as if she was being followed. The moment their eyes met, Mrs. Whitmore saw the fear and desperation in Emily's face, a look that demanded immediate action. Just then, Mrs. Whitmore spotted a man watching them closely. His intentions were unclear, but the danger in his gaze was unmistakable. She knew she had to protect this child at all costs. Before we dive into this gripping story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you find yourself drawn into this emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe. The sun peeked through the wispy clouds, casting a warm glow over Willow Creek Park as the morning dew evaporated from the grass. A familiar figure made her way along the winding path. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore, a petite woman in her early 70s, walked with a slight shuffle. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, and she wore a comfortable cardigan while carrying a well-worn canvas bag, its contents rustling with each step. Approaching her favorite bench, Mrs. Whitmore's eyes crinkled with a smile. The wooden seat, weathered by countless seasons, sat beneath a sprawling oak tree. She lowered herself onto it with a contented sigh, feeling the familiar grooves beneath her fingertips. "Good morning, my little friends," she murmured, reaching into her bag. As if on cue, a flock of pigeons began to gather at her feet. Mrs. Whitmore pulled out a small paper bag filled with birdseed and carefully opened it, the scent wafting through the air, drawing even more birds to her side. With a gentle flick of her wrist, she scattered a handful of seeds onto the ground. The pigeons cooed and pecked, their feathers shimmering in the morning light. Mrs. Whitmore watched them with a warm, nostalgic smile, memories from long ago flickering in her mind. "There you go," she murmured, tossing another handful. "Plenty for everyone." As she fed the birds, her mind wandered to a time when her life had been filled with noise and laughter. She could almost hear the echoes of her children's voices, the pitter-patter of little feet running through her house. But those days were long gone. Her children had grown up and moved away, starting families of their own in distant cities. What was once a bustling household full of love and activity had slowly faded into quiet solitude. The park had become her refuge, a place where she could feel connected to the world around her, even if only for a little while each day. Mrs. Whitmore's gaze drifted to a group of children playing on the nearby playground. Their shrieks of joy and peals of laughter carried across the park, bringing a faint smile to her face. A little girl with pigtails zoomed down the slide, her arms raised in triumph as she landed. A boy chased his friend around the monkey bars, their faces flushed with excitement. "Oh, to be young again," Mrs. Whitmore chuckled to herself, tossing more seeds to the pigeons. Watching the children play brought her comfort. Their innocence and joy were a balm for her lonely heart, reminding her of the days when her own children were small, when the world seemed full of endless possibilities. As she observed the playground, her thoughts drifted to her family. She wondered what her grandchildren might be doing at that very moment. Were they playing in a park like this one? Were they laughing and running just like these children? "I bet little Jake would love that slide," she mused, picturing her youngest grandson. "And Olivia would be all over those monkey bars." A twinge of sadness tugged at her heart. She had only met her grandchildren a handful of times, during family gatherings or holiday visits. The distance made it difficult to form the close bond she had always dreamed of having with them. Reaching into her bag, she pulled out a small photo album and flipped through the pages, tracing her finger over the smiling faces of her family. There was her daughter's wedding day, her son's college graduation, and a few precious snapshots of her grandchildren as babies. "Look how they've grown," she whispered to herself, a mixture of pride and longing in her voice. She imagined what it would be like to have them nearby, to bake cookies together, to read them bedtime stories. Her gentle demeanor hid a deep sense of longing for that connection. Closing the album, she tucked it back in her bag and took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp morning air. The park had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could find peace amid her solitude. But today, the ache of loneliness felt particularly sharp. As the morning wore on, she continued feeding the pigeons and watching the world go by. She nodded politely to the joggers and dog walkers who passed her bench, exchanging brief pleasantries. A young mother pushing a stroller smiled at her, and Mrs. Whitmore felt a pang of envy mixed with joy. "What a beautiful baby," she called out as they passed. The mother beamed with pride, pausing to let Mrs. Whitmore admire the sleeping infant. For a moment, she could almost imagine it was her own grandchild. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the bustling morning crowd began to thin. Families packed up their picnic baskets, and the playground slowly emptied. Mrs. Whitmore watched as the park transformed around her, the lively atmosphere giving way to a quieter, more subdued energy. She glanced at her watch, surprised to see how much time had passed. My, where did the morning go?" she murmured. The bag of birdseed was nearly empty, and most of the pigeons had wandered off. She glanced around, taking in the now deserted landscape. The colorful playground equipment stood abandoned, swings swaying gently in the breeze, as if mourning the absence of eager children. Even the usual crowd of evening joggers and dog walkers seemed to have vanished, leaving Mrs. Whitmore feeling oddly exposed. "My goodness," she murmured. "I've never seen the park this empty before." The silence was broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and distant city sounds. She found herself straining to hear any sign of life, the unusual quiet making her more aware of her surroundings than ever before. It was then that she spotted her. A small figure entered the park from the eastern gate. At first, Mrs. Whitmore thought it might be a lost child looking for their parents. But as the girl drew closer, it became clear that something was amiss. The child, who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, walked with a nervous energy that seemed out of place in the tranquil setting. Her clothes were slightly disheveled, as if she'd been running or hiding. Her face, framed by messy brown pigtails, was etched with anxiety, her eyes darting back and forth as she made her way deeper into the park. Mrs. Whitmore leaned forward on her bench, her brow furrowed with concern. "Hello there, dear," she called out gently, not wanting to startle the child. "Are you all right?" Continue story. The story will continue in the same detailed, immersive style while keeping all key events intact, fully rewritten with new character names and subtle variations to ensure freshness. It will maintain the emotional depth and pacing of the original while expanding upon the nuances of Mrs. Whitmore's actions and thoughts.